Good afternoon and welcome to the Virginia Tech Science Festival. My name is Phyllis Newbill and I direct the Virginia Tech Science Festival. A few things before we get started. We are filming this session, like all the sessions at today's Virginia Tech Science Festival. So you're filming in 360. Hello to our friends online. Everybody wave to our friends online. Hi, everybody. Good. So glad you're all here. Following the presentation, there is an evaluation for those under 18. And if you have questions, if you'll hold on to them until the end, and we'll have a period for questions, I'll come around with the mic. And please turn off your phones. There's all the housekeeping at the beginning. I do take a few minutes to let you know the Virginia Tech Science Festival is more than today. We've had a lot of fun today and have a few more to go today. But in addition to today's events, there are field trips and also online meetups that are happening between scientists and school groups throughout the fall. So I do want to thank some people who were involved in that. Right now, I'd actually like to thank our crew who are making everything happen. So Tanner Eptigrove, Brandon Hale, Dylan Parker, and David Franisich are in the back making everything work for us, and I so appreciate you all being here today. Now, for our 2 o'clock session at today's Virginia Tech Science Festival events, we have Inside Out, how we develop, control, and express our emotions every day. Jennifer Phillips is going to be our speaker today. Jennifer is in developmental psychology, and she is what we call a PhD candidate. Now that's a bunch of words there. So for those of you all who are not in college yet, when you go to college the first time, you're going to get either an associate's, that's if you get a 2-year degree, or you get a bachelor's, which is a 4-year degree. So you go for 4 more years of college, you get a bachelor's degree. Many people go from a bachelor's to a master's degree. So that's the next 2 or 3 or 4, however many years of college. Okay? And after you've got a master's and you want to go to even more school, then we have what's called a doctoral degree. Do you know somebody who's a doctor somebody? You do now. Hi, I'm Dr. Newbill. So a PhD is a doctoral degree, so that's even more school after that. That's a third or even 4th degree after that. And that PhD stands for, it's kind of a backwards word. The D part stands for doctor, and the PH stands for philosophy. In Greek, the PH is just one letter. So it's a D, Doctor of Philosophy. Okay, that's a lot of information about that, isn't it? So Jennifer is on her way to becoming a PhD. So she's a PhD candidate. All right? So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jennifer, and I am excited because I really want to learn to regulate and express and control my emotions. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. As Phyllis said, my name is Jennifer. A little bit about me before I get into my talk. As Phyllis just said, I am a graduate student here, a PhD candidate. I'm in my 3rd year here at Virginia Tech, and that means I'm in like 19th grade, which means I've been going to school for 19 whole years. And when I'm all done, I'll have been in school for 21 years. It's a lot of time. I study what we call developmental psychology, which means that I do a lot of work figuring out how people grow, all the way from when they're little tiny babies, all the way up until they're teenagers. I work in a lab that's called the Cognition, Affect, and Psychophysiology Lab, also called the CAP Lab. And I'm interested in what's called emotion development. So today I'm going to talk to you all about my work. I'm going to explain what emotions are, how we express our emotions, how we control our emotions, and then I'll do some talk about my research at the end. But before I get into all of that, I want you all to play a little game with me and keep your masks on while we do this. But first, I want you to make a face like when you see something that makes you feel really happy. Can you all make a really happy face for me? Perfect. Now I want you to make a face like when you see something that makes you feel sad. Can you all make a really sad face for me? Perfect. Now I want you to make a face like when you see something that makes you feel mad. Can you all make a really mad face for me? Perfect. And next, make a face like when you see something that makes you feel scared. You make a scared face. Next, I want you to make a face like when you taste something that's really yucky. Ugh. And then finally, let's just go back to happy. Can you all make a happy face for me again? Perfect. You're all great at that. So what you just did there was you showed me your emotions. And emotions are these things that we feel on the inside of our bodies, but we show on the outside of our bodies. So on the inside, when we feel an emotion, things happen like your heart rate changes, how fast or slow you breathe changes. You even have little activity going on inside of your brain that changes when you feel an emotion. And then on the outside, we show them by showing them with our faces, making smiles or frowns. We also do things like adjust how our eyes look and move our hands and all sorts of things like that. So when I asked you a few minutes ago to make all those emotions, when I asked you to make a happy face, maybe you thought about playing with your favorite toy. When I asked you to make a sad face, maybe you thought about a movie that you watched that was really sad. When I had you make an angry face, maybe you thought about a time maybe when you had a fight with a friend or with one of your brothers or sisters. When I asked you to make a scared face, maybe you were thinking about a scary movie you saw. And when I asked you to think of something that tastes yucky, maybe you thought of something yucky that you had eaten before, something you really don't like, and that's an emotion that we call disgust. So we feel these emotions in response to something that we can see or hear or feel, even taste or smell. So all of these things that we're taking in with our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose, and our skin. So now I'm going to talk about how we develop our emotions. And the word develop means that we grow and add and learn new things over time. When we're little, teeny tiny babies is when we start developing our emotions, and we continue to do this until we're adults. So all of you out here are still developing your emotions, and you're getting better at it every single day. When we're little babies, our brains are really small and they have to grow. So when we're little tiny babies, we only understand just a few emotions. We can show a couple of emotions. We can understand a few emotions. But by the time we're grown-ups, our brains have gotten bigger. They grow. They get to be their full size that they need to be. And we have all of our emotions developed. We can show people all of our emotions, and we can feel all sorts of kinds of emotions. And as we grow up, other people help us learn how to show our emotions. People like our parents or your brothers and sisters, even your grandparents or your teachers and other friends all help us learn about our emotions and develop new emotions as we get older. Next, I want to talk about how we can control the emotions that we show. And we do this using something that's called emotion regulation, which just means we're controlling our emotions. This happens when we want to express our emotions or show our emotions to somebody else. It helps us understand how much of the emotion we want to feel and what kind of the emotion we want to feel, and also how much of that emotion we want to show other people. Emotion regulation is really important for us to do because it helps us tell and show our parents and our teachers how we feel, right? If you're feeling sad or angry about something, you want an adult to help you feel happier again. It also helps us be kind to other people. If we can see that someone else is feeling sad or angry or upset about something, we can understand how they're feeling and help them feel better. It also helps us show and hide our emotions from other people whenever we feel like we need or want to. We regulate our emotions or control our emotions in order to achieve goals that are connected to these emotional feelings that we have. Some people do a really good job at this, and some people maybe struggle a little bit with this, but that's okay because we have ways that we can help other people learn how to regulate their emotions and become better at it. So for example, let's say you're playing with your favorite toy in the whole world, and then all of a sudden, someone comes and just takes the toy right out of your hand. first, how would you feel? Can someone raise your hand and say, how would you feel if somebody took your favorite toy from your hand?
I would feel very upset.
Very upset. Anyone else?
I would feel sad and mad.
Sad and mad? Yeah. How about one more?
I would feel sad and kind of angry and really mad.
Sad and angry and mad. Exactly. You wouldn't like it if someone did that to you. It'd make you feel pretty upset. Next, what would your goal be? Okay, so what would you want to do? If someone took the toy out of your hand, what would you ultimately want to do? Get it back? Yeah? Anyone say anything different?
Tell a grown-up.
Tell a grown-up, yeah. Okay, so exactly. Your goal is going to be to get that toy back from the person, and tell a grown-up's going to come up in a minute here. But ultimately, we can achieve that goal, which is to get the toy back, while still expressing our emotion. And there's several different ways that we can do this. So first, you can tell and show whoever took that toy away how it made you feel, and then ask them to give it back. So you can go up to them and say, you taking that toy from me made me feel really angry. May I please have it back? If that doesn't work, you can go tell a grown-up, and you can tell the grown-up how that made you feel. You can say, my friend took my toy from me, and I'm feeling really angry, and ask the grown-up to help you get the toy back. These are some ways of regulating our emotions that are better than other ways. You're achieving your goal, and you're getting that toy back, and you're still showing other people how that made you feel. Some other ways that we regulate our emotions could be just going up to whoever took the toy back, and then you may yell at them or shove them or even hit them, and just show really angry emotions towards the person who took the toy from you. Or finally, you could not even ask for the toy back and just let them keep it. These last two things, right, we know that hitting other people and yelling and shoving people is not a kind thing to do. And we know that if we don't ask for the toy back, we're probably not going to get it back. So we would call these ways of regulating emotions, if someone does this, they're struggling to regulate emotions. And we want to help them regulate their emotions like the first two ways we talked about. Next, I want to talk about how we express our emotions. The word express, or to express our emotions, means that we show other people our emotions. We do this with facial expressions and also what's called body language. So at the very beginning, when I asked you all to make faces at those different types of emotions, you all were making facial expressions. It's a little hard to see underneath the mask, but I'm sure you were smiling or frowning or making a grumpy face. But we also have body language. So for example, if you're happy, maybe you would throw your arms up in the air. Or if you're sad, maybe you would cry, put your hands up in your face. Or if you're scared, maybe you would cover your face with your hands. Or if you're angry, maybe you would cross your arms. If you taste something yucky, you would maybe put your hands up like this. Ugh. So those are different ways that we can use our bodies to also express our emotions. Expressing our emotions is really important because it helps other people know how we're feeling. Because if we don't show our emotions, people don't know if we feel sad or upset or angry. It's important for other people to understand how we feel, like your parents or your teachers, especially if you feel sad or scared or angry, because that way your parent or your teacher or whoever can help you feel happy again. So it's important to express our emotions because other people need to help us feel better. Now for the last part, I want to talk a little bit about what exactly it is I do as a graduate student here at Virginia Tech. And I have two main areas of research. The first thing that I study is I want to understand how emotion regulation, or how this controlling of our emotions, develops when we're little tiny babies and continues to develop all the way until we're teenagers. And I do this in two ways. I look at what I call the biology in children. So I look at things like their heart rate and their breathing rate. So how fast is your heart beating? How fast are you breathing? And I also look at brain activity. And you have this little bit of electrical activation that happens in your brain when you show emotions. And when you show different emotions, that electrical activity changes. Like when you show different emotions, your heart rate gets faster or slower, or your breathing rate gets faster or slower. Another thing I look at here are what I call social influences. And this just means I look and see how other people can help develop emotions. So I look at maybe the parent, how are your parents helping you develop emotion regulation? How are your brothers and sisters helping you develop emotion regulation? And maybe how are your friends helping you develop your emotion regulation? My second area of research, my second thing that I sort of study, is I look at kids who struggle with emotion regulation, who maybe need a little bit of help regulating their emotions. And I see if this leads to different things and causes things, like feeling afraid all the time, or being really angry all the time, or even having trouble concentrating and focusing on schoolwork. And my goal with this would be to work with other people and develop interventions, which are just helpful programs, so that these kids who maybe struggle with emotion regulation can get better at it and just help them be happy and healthy and be able to express and control their emotions appropriately. So just to wrap up, our emotions develop from the time that we're little tiny babies all the way up until we're grown-ups. We need to learn how to regulate or control our emotions so that other people understand how we feel, so that we can show the right emotions at the right time, and so that we can be kind to other people. We have many different emotions with many different ways to express them, like with our faces and our bodies. And then my research hopes to understand how emotion regulation develops and how we can help kids who struggle with emotion regulation get better at it and be happy, healthy kids. And so that's all I have for you today. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you for coming and listening today.
Thank you, Jennifer. This was so cool. I love that. I think sometimes when we think about science, we don't think about emotions. Did you all know that emotions are part of science? Science is bigger than you think. Ha ha. I love it. I see a question back here. Let me come this way.
When you show your emotions, like when you said, like if somebody takes something away from you, does it like depend on what you think about it to show your emotion? Like you could not care or you could care?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you care, so like let's say you're playing with a toy and you really love that toy and then someone takes it away from you. If you really care about that toy, you're probably going to feel really, really upset about it. If you don't really care so much about that toy, you might just be like, oh, that's okay, I'll get it back later. It might also depend on who takes the toy from you. So like maybe one of your best friends takes it from you and you know they didn't mean to hurt you, they just wanted to play with it. Or if someone that you're not friends with takes it from you, you might feel more upset. That was an excellent question.
Who else has a question?
How do emotions, work?
How do they work? So they work. They happen when we see something that makes us want to feel something. And a long, long time ago, researchers just picked names for the emotions. So when we see something that makes us feel happy, they just call that happy. Or if we see something that makes us feel mad, they just call that mad. But we feel and get emotions whenever something or someone or something we see or taste or hear makes us feel a certain way. And that's how we get an emotion. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
How did emotions get their name?
How did emotions get their name? That's a really good question. I know that a long time ago, like I was just saying, researchers just sort of picked a name. That's the name that they liked. They wanted to call it emotions. And they looked at people who were smiling or frowning or making a grumpy face or making a scared face. And they just sort of said, you know what? This is what we're going to call that emotion. So that's how emotions got their name.
Like, how many emotions do we have?
That's a really good question. So at the beginning, I had you all show me 5 emotions. And those are what we call the basic emotions, or what we can also call universal emotions. And what that means is it's just those are emotions that everyone in the whole wide world has. But we have other emotions that I didn't have you show, like love is an emotion, and feeling guilty is an emotion. And there's a lot of different emotions, and there's way too many for me to count. But basically, when you feel something that makes you feel like your heart rate's changing or your breathing rate's changing, you're feeling some kind of an emotion. And you may or may not be able to name that emotion, but the short answer is we have hundreds of emotions. There's so many.
I know this question might be a little silly, but when you said if you see something that makes you sad, like your brain might be it reacts to it too. Isn't that kind of like Inside Out?
Yeah, and that's not, there's no silly questions ever. But that is like Inside Out, right? In that movie where all the emotions in Riley's brain were activating, it's kind of like that. What happens is you have what are called cells in your brain, and those are just the little things that sort of talk to each other and make your brain do certain things and make you think about certain things. So when you feel an emotion, those little cells, like those little emotions in Inside Out, are working together and figuring out how to make you feel. That was a great question.
I have a baby cousin that's like 6 months old. How many emotions do you think she would have probably developed?
How many emotions? Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I have a 6-month cousin. How many emotions do you think she's developed?
How many emotions do I think your 6-month cousin has developed so far? It's hard to say. I would say your 6-month-old cousin has at least developed those 5 we talked about: happy, sad, scared, angry, and disgust. I'm sure your baby cousin probably can smile, and you can see that they're happy, and you can hear them cry, which tells you that they're upset about something, and they might cry differently depending on if they're angry about something, if someone takes a toy away, or if they're scared about something. That kind of tells us they're scared, or angry or sad. And if they taste something they don't like, I'm sure they spit it out or make a yucky face. I would say at least 5, but it's hard to tell because I would have to see the baby and look at them. That's a great question.
I wrote down a couple. You said that you study how emotions grow from when a person is very little until they're a teenager. Mm-hmm. Can emotions keep developing after someone is grown up?
That's a good question. So specifically what I study is that development of emotion regulation, or how we control the emotion. And so what I find in some of my work from being a baby up until adolescence, there's definitely changes, and for the most part we get better at it. And then some reading I've done is we get into later adulthood, you get even better at regulating your emotions for the most part.
What is the first emotion that you develop?
The first emotion that you develop? Well, that's a tricky question to answer, but I'll try my best. So when you're a little teeny tiny baby, the first thing that babies do is they cry, right? And it's not necessarily because they're upset about anything. That's just really how babies tell us that they're here, and they've been born. But probably the first emotion that we can see in a little tiny baby is happiness, because they do that, and what they do specifically is they smile at the person who takes care of them. So I would say probably happiness.
Is it actually possible for somebody to have emotions, but there's one emotion that they don't have?
I guess that would be, it would be possible. I think it would be rare though, which means I don't think it would happen very often. We mainly develop emotions because we see other people show emotions. So if you don't see someone show an emotion, it would be possible that it wouldn't develop. But I would say it would be very rare.
Do different people have different emotions?
Well, like I said earlier, those 5 emotions we all did at the beginning, everyone in the world has those emotions. But different people might have different emotions to different events, right? So if someone took your favorite toy, you might feel angry at them. But if someone took, your friend's favorite toy, they may feel okay with that. They may not feel angry. So it might depend on how someone responds to the event in terms of what they would feel.
Here I come.
Is it possible if 2 people have the same emotion at one time?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. If you and a brother or sister or a friend see the same thing, or even don't see the same thing, you can both feel the same thing at the same time. That's definitely possible.
Can you have more than one emotion at a time?
You absolutely can. Maybe you're in a situation where your best friend wins a prize. And you really care for your best friend and you're happy for them, but you might also feel sad that you didn't win the prize. So that's very possible. You can feel more than one emotion at the same time.
So many good questions.
I know.
I have another one written down. My question was, you said that sometimes we hide emotions, and maybe that's part of emotional development. But also it's really good to be able to show emotions. Is it also really good to be able to hide them? And can you talk more about that?
Yes. So it's more important to hide them, I would say, when you're in a social setting. So when you're at school or even at the mall or here today, it's important to be able to hide an emotion when we say it's not socially appropriate to show that. And I know that's a big word, but what that means is there are certain times when it may not be okay to feel angry, right? If you were in a store with your mom or dad and you were mad about something, it may not be appropriate to show how mad you are about that thing. You may wait until you get home. And older kids and teenagers and adults, and in me, right? If I go to work and I go do my research, if I'm sad about something, it's a good thing for me to sort of hide if I'm feeling sad, because it's not appropriate to show that sadness sometimes when I'm at work.
Great. We have time for maybe one more, if there's one more burning question. I see a hand.
I lost my question.
Oh, that happens. Do you feel sad about it? All right, well, we are at time, so I want to thank everyone for being here today for this. This is so cool, just thinking about how we can do science on emotions. Did you all know you could be a scientist and study emotions? That is so I got one more. Wait.
Yeah.
Is Inside Out, does that feel good? Does that, as a scientist who studies emotions?
I love that movie.
Okay,
I think
good.
it's a great example of how you feel things and what happens inside when you feel things.
Good, that makes me feel better. If
Yeah.
it was wrong, I was just going to be sad. All right, Joy is here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jennifer,
Thank
for
you.
sharing your science with us. I'm going to ask you to continue conversations in the lobby while we get set for the next show, and I'll see you again at 3 o'clock. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
all so much for coming and for your excellent questions.